What's up, my internet fam? How y'all doing today? Hey, look here. We're gonna keep this thing short and sweet today. I thought that I would still do my show today, as you can see, at a different time. And part of this is simply doing this no matter where I'm at, so you guys can be here with me. A big thing that I think I wanted to do as I build this new platform out was really practice being consistent. And so that requires making sure no matter what I've got going on, that I spend some time making sure that we have these chats, as this is just regular life. So welcome to my life. We're here today at Floor and Decor. We're actually remodeling a master bathroom, and I thought it was important, again, to just stay consistent and do what I said I was going to do, which is broadcast every Saturday. Now, I am changing things up a little bit. I've decided to try to move the time around, as well as shorten some of these episodes to see if the response is better. I know we live in a day and age where everything is microwave and everybody wants it quick, and everybody's attention span is about 5 good minutes. So sitting and listening to a chat for 30 minutes or an hour, I don't think most people are probably doing it. So I'm going to gauge the time as well as the views and determine what the right episode time should be. So with that being said, today's episode is going to be basically 30 good minutes. There are 2 topics that I want to talk about, and these topics will consist of the following. Number 1, I had a very interesting week, so we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of being grateful. I like to think of it as, to be great, more importantly, greatness starts with being grateful. And so many of us have so much to be grateful for, and I want to talk a little bit about how much of that are we really doing versus being caught up in just regular stuff, right? And then the second topic that I want to talk about very briefly is, do you know where your children are? We're going to get into that a little bit. Years ago, as I was growing up, I think about 11 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock, it used to come on the TV and it would say, it's 9 o'clock, it's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? We're going to talk about that a little bit as well, in terms of what that really means in this day and age for those of us who still are rearing children. So I'm going to start by giving some shout outs to those who have joined me. Again, if you're just joining, hopefully it's not going to be too disruptive. I just wanted to bring you with me on my regular Saturday. And today is shopping for tile for our master bathroom project, and, trying to keep this thing moving. So a lot of folks have joined thus far. Let me kind of get right into this. I see Anthony Jordan. Not sure if I'm clear who some of these folks are. I see Tierra. I want to say hi to Sharon Robbins, Michelle Walker, my Aunt Dorothy, Philip Lewis, my mom, Angela Rallison. Thank you guys all for tuning in today. This is the CS Files. CS Files is simply common sense, right? Common sense files, because common sense ain't common. So I'm your boy TC, and we're just going to have some chats here. Hopefully you guys are having a great Saturday. Mine is typical in terms of just being on the move, doing things. So I want to get right into this topic. This week I had a really interesting situation where I was traveling for business. And for those of you who travel enough to use TSA PreCheck, it's a beautiful thing, right? You get to walk through the lines and get right on the plane through security with very minimal disruption to your day, such as taking off shoes, taking laptops and liquids out of your bag, all of those good things. And so this is a service provided by the Federal Aviation TSA group. But you have to keep this thing updated. So 5 years ago, I went and did all the screening like many of you. And of course, I had TSA pre-check on on all of my flights. Well, I mess around and let it lapse, show up at the airport, and all of a sudden, I'm no longer special. I'm going through regular security. Now, I do show up in enough time to handle most of these things, but it just totally frustrated me to take off my shoes, and I ended up having some chapstick in my pocket, and then they found a vitamin in my pocket, and then I had to take all of my stuff out my bag, and then my wallet had to be put in a separate bin, and needless to say, by the time I got to the gate, I was beyond frustrated, just a little perturbed and almost pissed. So as I'm sitting here getting ready to get on this flight, I'm just frustrated because I had to go through regular security like everybody else. I get on the plane, get on my seat. Older couple walks by, older guy, probably in his 70s or so, and they walk all the way to the back of the plane. Well, within about 10, 15 minutes, there are paramedics running onto this plane. They're running on and going straight to the back of the plane because there's an issue. Now, mind you, we haven't pushed from the gate. People are still boarding, and they've stopped everybody from boarding. They go to the back of the plane. The guy who just walked by me has now just had a massive heart attack. So now there's 2 EMTs, and then there's 4 EMTs, and before you know it, there's about 10 people are on the plane in the back, actually trying to revive and resuscitate this man who has simply walked to his seat and had a massive heart attack. His wife is by his side. They're desperately trying to revive him. They're bringing in, machines, and they're shocking him, and they're pumping him, and all kinds of madness is going on. The whole plane is just somber. The flight attendants are basically weeping. People on the plane are weeping. And after about 40 minutes in the back, they raise this man up on a straight gurney. He's all of 350 pounds. So it's about 8 EMT guys lifting this man up to bring him over all of the seats to get him off to a stretcher inside of Atlanta Hartford as they're pumping his chest. So as they're raising him across the seats, he literally comes straight in front of me. I literally had to put his arm back on the gurney where his body was just completely limp. He was white as a piece of paper, and they were study compression on the chest trying to get this guy back. As he went by and they finally got him off this plane, the entire plane went completely numb, just sober moment. Everybody is basically now thinking, and you got people crying, people hugging, and in that moment, I had a complete reflection of what my day was about. I began to almost apologize to God for complaining about something so trivial as having to take my shoes off to come through security, dump my pockets, things that you're supposed to do anyways. I done just got spoiled because I got TSA pre-check. And all of those things now meant nothing. I sat and really began to reflect on how grateful I really needed to be about life in general. Now, don't get me wrong. I often reflect on just being grateful, but what I learned that day was the importance of doing that daily and understanding that the power of being great is wrapped in your ability to be grateful, to be humble for where you are, to be humble for who you are, to be humble and grateful for what you have, no matter where you're at, because any moment it could be worse than whatever situation you're going through at that time. Grateful. How often do you spend time just being grateful? Greatness is something many of us seek, some do not. But I find that the greatest among us have mastered being grateful. And so that was a lesson to me in the midst of just my fast paced world, running and flying and doing what I do, to remember that it is the simplest things in life that mean the most, like your ability to simply get up on your own and walk through a plane, your ability to breathe on your own, your ability to sustain the basic things of life without assistance. Taking for granted these things can leave us in a very, very horrible predicament when things go wrong. So the beauty of the story was, before we ended up taking off, the pilot comes over the PA and first of all says, "Thank you all for your patience." And now, mind you, we are 3 hours delayed taking off. People have missed connection flights. It's a mess. And he thanks everyone for their patience and ultimately tells us that the man lived. The plane erupts into cheer. People are crying and hugging. Flight attendants are equally, just crying out of joy and stress. And, ultimately it was a happy ending. And I pray that this man's life continues to be good for him, and that, it ultimately allows him to fully recover. But in the moment, it really taught me a lesson about being grateful, because in a twinkling of an eye, this man was gone. And only by the goodness of God were they able to bring him back. And it is just like that we get caught up in our everyday lives and many times forget how important it is to be grateful. So be grateful. If you haven't given that some thought and you don't do that daily like me, because we get up running and doing what we do, be grateful. Spend some time being proactively grateful. I think that it is a lesson for all of us, as life many times just gets in the way and we ultimately get to running and gunning and doing what we do, and that's probably not something that we do enough of. I really just wanted to share that because it was an absolutely crazy week. Now, here is then how the trip ended, y'all. So I literally take a one-day trip. All my cousins in Detroit gonna get me because I flew to Detroit and worked for a day. And but I was busy, y'all. I couldn't kick it. So I go in for a day, and the next day I come home. I get on the plane. I'm getting messages on my phone because I'm looking at news. The president is on, and he is talking about the grounding of a particular aircraft, the 737-8 MAX and B MAX. I look at the pamphlet in the front of the chair, and I am on the planes that he's grounding because of the recent crash in Ethiopia that killed 157 people. And we are pushing off from the gate, y'all. We finna fly. And this man is on a national broadcast saying I'm grounding all aircraft out of the sky as we speak. And I thought, now, if this ain't just icing on the cake. So needless to say, when we landed safely, I was grateful, okay, that there were no issues and that my 737-8 MAX had zero problems. Once again, just a total climax to the day that I'd already had, or that past 48 hours. Amazing, to say the least. So another reason to be grateful in terms of just being able to get from point A to point B safely every day. We don't think about it. We get up and drive cars from here to there. Never think twice about how blessed we are just to arrive at that destination. We take all of those things for granted. And I'm simply saying, be grateful about every little thing that happens in your life, because none of it is promised. None of it is promised. All right. My second topic that I want to talk about, and I'm not going to get too into this. I'm going to make this more of a positive thing than a negative thing. What's going on, Milo? I watched Leaving Neverland, both episodes. This is the Michael Jackson story. And I must say, I will never be the same again. Any black boy, 40 to 60, grew up wanting to be, at some point in your life, Michael Jackson. I wanted to be Michael Jackson like everybody else. And here was the icon that had been a part of our entire lives. So he was essentially a god in a lot of ways, right? So I've heard all the stories and the rumors over the years, and ultimately I bought in like everybody else. But I watched this documentary, and all I'm going to say is my life has been changed forever in terms of my perspective of who Michael was. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not here to judge or any of those things. And there's some Michael Jackson fans that ain't going to never, ever believe. But when I tell you that there was something very wrong with Michael, believe me. As Angela Miles says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Michael showed us who he was more than once. And ultimately, it became an issue of celebrity that allowed us to not see it for what it was. As Oprah said, celebrity is like looking into the sun. Looking into the sun. Looking into the sun, you don't see so well. You blinded literally by the light. We were blinded, y'all. If you've not seen the documentary, please do so. I've already heard that there are different opinions about it. The one gentleman who has sued multiple people. That ain't what I'm talking about. Everybody ain't lying, y'all. All of the conversations point to something was very wrong there. So my topic to you in the next 10 minutes is, for those of you raising children, back to my first topic, or my first comment about this topic, do you know where your children are? Do you know where your children are? Again, any of y'all my age, you remember the TV coming on late at night and asking the question, do you know where your children are? It's 9 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. They used to make that a public service announcement. So today, in this fast-paced world of technology, our children appear to be directly next to us or in the same house as us. But I challenge all parents who have provided their child with a cell phone to ask yourself the question, even when he's standing next to you, do you know where your children are? Because he is standing next to you on a mobile phone does not mean you know where he's at. Until you understand what he's doing, who he's communicating with, who he's got access to, you really don't know where your children are at. They're in their phone, which doesn't mean that they're in your presence. They're in your phone, which doesn't mean that they're in your presence. Do you know where your children are? Do you know where your children are for those of you who simply leave children with relatives because they are a relative? I'm going to say that one again. For those of you who leave your children with relatives for babysitting purposes, on the merit that they are relatives, do you know where your children are? For those who leave your children with people who you haven't fully vetted their character, who they are, what they're about, what other people have said about them, do you know where your children are? There was a great conversation after the Michael Jackson story that Oprah did, where she spoke with men who had been violated at some point in their lives sexually, and they talked very, passionately about how that whole thing transpired. And as we've all heard, and if you haven't heard, the number one people who are responsible for doing these horrific things to our children are people we trust, family members, friends, and people we trust. And to think, as you heard in the documentary, that your child trusts you enough to simply tell you when something like that happens, you are equally fooling yourselves, because that's not the case either. So it is in our best interest to always double and triple check. Do we really know where our children are? You cannot assume. You can't take for granted that they're with a relative and therefore they're safe. You need to have a bond and communication with your child that supersedes any situation that could come up to put them in a place to where they cannot be safe. And to assume that you have that relationship is the first step towards not being able to keep your child safe. Keeping them safe by understanding where they're at. Keeping them safe by understanding how they're using mobile phone technology. A lot of us just assume there's no big deal. We're in a modern day and age where most of their minds and their innocence is being robbed by the phones that you've put in their hands. Take any phone right now, go to Google. Tell me what you pull up. Take your phone right now, think about the grossest thing possible, and Google it. Tell me what comes up on your phone. You don't think your child, your 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, hasn't figured that out? They have the entire world, good and bad, sitting in the palm of their hands. If you haven't taken the measures to understand ways to protect them, ways to monitor them, ways to prohibit access to certain sites, you're doing your child an injustice. That's the modern day predator. It's the phone that you've put in your child's hand. The fact that you think they wouldn't go to these sites is an absolute tragedy for their safety. They will, they do, and they will continue. Here's another one I'll give you from personal experience. Years ago, when one of my children were probably about 10, 11 years old, we allowed a friend, a neighborhood friend, into our house because we saw some weirdness going on there, and we thought our child could be a better influence on them being in our house. We told our child, you can't go there, but she can come here. How many of y'all done that? So in the process of doing that, months went by. They played together. They played in the playroom. They hung out. All was well. Until one day, I get onto a computer that they've had access to, and I am looking at hours and hours of inappropriate sites now. Hours and hours of inappropriate sites. Come to find out, the child in which we were trying to positively influence had negatively influenced my own child in my house. So again, I ask, do you know where your children are? Do you know who your children are with? We are products of our own environment. You know when a little bad kid is in your presence, and just because your child calls them a friend doesn't necessarily make them the right kind of friends. So parenting our young minds is critical. We are living in a society where anything is accessible. And not only is it people, but it's information that can truly rob our children of their innocence. They are the most precious cargo and people in our lives, and we need to proactively protect them and not take for granted that we simply know. It's a tough topic. It's a tough conversation to have, but it is worth having. We live in a time to where if you are not having these kinds of conversations, you are literally putting the lives and the mind of your children at the mercy of everything that does. It's a tough one. We have gone through it with children from all ages, and thank God my last one is 20, so we're a little further down the road. But I would say to all of you who have children in your household, grandparents, it's up to you to be savvy. Kids are staying at your house. They love being at Nana's house. They love being over their grandparents. You have a responsibility to also understand while they're in your actual environment what they're doing, how they're doing it. And if they have access to stuff that you don't understand, then you shouldn't let them have access to that in your presence. We are all responsible for the minds that we're molding and shaping in our young people. And it is an area that will only get worse and not better. So those are the two things that I had today. Hopefully these are some topics that resonated with most of us. We all have children in our lives, and that extends to nieces and nephews and any young minds that you have a responsibility to protect. Bring those topics up. Talk to the parents. Talk to your cousin them about how they're rearing their children and what they're being exposed to. This is something that we can all share in. Takes a village, as they say. That's a fact. And then, of course, the other topic around just the mere fact that in life it's so easy to get caught up and forget about the importance of being grateful. It should not require something catastrophic to happen before we take time to do that. So take time today to be grateful. Take time today to make it known to the one who is ultimately in charge of your lives and our lives, whether you believe in him or not, and that is the Almighty God, as well as just to yourself. Be grateful for where you're at, because that is the greatest strength in being great. And it really is about grateful, because that's the power that we get to go on. That's the power that we get to remain humble. That's the power that we get to see other people from a place of empathy, is when we are grateful for where we're at. I want to thank you guys for joining. I wanted to keep this short and sweet today. I am right at 30 minutes past the hour. The goal here is, as I continue this exercise, to understand a platform to further expand my speaking and public speaking communication skills to. I want to try to use this as a platform to monitor that. I don't want to make these sessions too long. I don't want to make them too short. And I want to make sure these are topics that are relevant to the mass majority. Some of these topics may not be as relevant to you as others, but the goal is to at least try and have a foundation whereby we can have some heartfelt, truly life coaching conversations. If you like what we're doing here, please share this video with others. Share this video with, if you can't say some of these things to some loved ones, send them this video. Let me do the talking. I don't know them personally. I'm just going to give them some common sense. And then ultimately still continue to give me ideas and thoughts on what you think about the platform. Initially I rolled this out as a 60-minute program, because I'm also taking copies of this and creating podcasts. But maybe 30 minutes equally works as well. Not really sure. I know people's minds move like this, and everybody's got things to do, so I'm not real sure how well that's working as well. But we'll see. So I'm actually looking at all the views as these things get posted and determining if the content is on point, as well as the duration, because I don't want to bore you, and I don't want to just be a voice out here talking for the sake of talking. I am sharing with you knowledge, my knowledge that I've occurred, and I am more than willing to share to impact other people's lives with the knowledge that I've been blessed and fortunate to learn myself. Okay? With that being said, let me ask, because here's the other little episode I like being able to do. Is there anyone, before I shut this session down, who would like to comment or add anything to the two topics that we've just discussed? I think it's important to also utilize other people to feed into the conversations, because we can learn from each other. I don't profess to know it all by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm open at all times to sharing or having others share in this dialogue. If you would like to comment on either of these two subjects, just simply post it in a message down below, and I will bring your camera online. I don't want to tap on nobody that don't want to talk, nor do I want to tap on anybody who really don't have anything to say. Okay, I think we're good. Well, look here, y'all. I'm going to get back to doing my Saturday stuff. just like most of you are doing your Saturday stuff. Thank you so much for spending 30 good minutes with me here on Saturday. I'm going to get back to the other side with the CFO, my Chief Finance Officer. Yes, that would be Connie Caston. And see what kind of tile she's picked out for this bathroom. And ultimately try and give her some support, as I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm just here for the ride, okay? So, hey, y'all have a great Saturday. Go out there and enjoy yourself. Live life to the fullest. Do the good things 2 times and the bad things once, okay? If it ain't good for you or good to you, don't do it. I'm your boy TC, talking to y'all from Floor & Decor. You know, it's a regular Saturday. Here we go. Y'all be safe, be good, be nice to each other. We'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.